I'm in favour of the motion. It's no surprise from my job that I'd agree with it. But that's not because I'm a loony lefty or work at a liberal university. It's because the hard data says so. Fact number one, women are underrepresented in senior positions across different work sectors in the UK. By underrepresented, I mean less than 50% women, which is actually quite modest, given that women and girls perform better at school and university these days. They're not making it to the top, even though they get a head start. The 2011 Equalities and Human Rights Commission report Sex and Power has some disheartening numbers, to say the least. You can almost hear Pankhurst turning in her grave. In politics these days, around a quarter of the top jobs go to women. In the female-friendly public sector, the same, a mere quarter. It gets worse. In the media and culture sector, only 15% of leadership posts are taken up by females, and in business, a dire 10%. Despite some of the best sex discrimination legislation in the world, Britain doesn't compare well internationally either, on employment that is. The 2012 UN Gender Index puts the UK in 18th position as a good place for women generally. However, it slips down the rankings to 46th place for labour force participation, below Russia, France and the United States, and 57th place for wage equality, below Nigeria, Qatar and Kenya. So what should we conclude from this data? Is there something lacking in British women? Or is there something going on in British workplaces that prevents or deters most working women from reaching the top? We like to believe we live in a meritocracy and in progress, but the absence of women in authority surely indicates that talent alone is not enough to get ahead. So what's going on? Glass ceiling is a term that was coined about 20 years ago by the aptly named Federal Glass Ceiling Commission in the United States. It's defined as the unseen yet unbreachable barrier that keeps minorities and women from rising to the upper rungs of the corporate ladder, regardless of their qualifications and regardless of their achievements. I don't agree that it's unbreachable, but there are many women who have risen to the top of their organisations, all showing entrepreneurial flair, some of whom are sitting in this room. In the 21st century, the glass ceiling is better described as a state where women are persistently underrepresented in the top management and leadership of organisations. Clearly it's alive and well, and to extend the analogy, maybe the glass ceiling is bulletproof. Fact number two, it's not going to break anytime soon. It will take another 70 years, I repeat 70 years, to achieve an equal number of women directors in the FTSE 100. And another 45 years to achieve an equal number of women in the senior judiciary. It will take another 14 general elections, up to 70 years, to achieve an equal number of women MPs. I'm not going to live that long, and maybe you won't either. The glass ceiling is not close to being broken yet. At UCL, where I work, where we are, the percentage of women in the two top grades has barely moved in the last 4 years since I've been working here. It also means that there are very few role models for women when they are planning their careers, which can have a vicious circle effect. Who's to blame? Well, I don't like to point the finger, and besides it's very complex. The lack of women in senior positions is a historical artefact, a legacy of how the paid workplace evolved by and large with a male breadwinner in mind. I'd like you now to picture a professor in your minds. I'm willing to bet that most of you in this room had an image of a man in your heads, most probably an older white man too, possibly with a beard. People don't envisage women in leadership roles. We all have unconscious biases that we've inherited from our environment. There's a significant body of psychological research to show that women are judged more strictly than men when it comes to assessing leadership qualities.
Information. Do you not feel that that's kind of a historical thing? Like in the past there were prejudices that prevented women from getting to those stages, but now we're in a new age where women have a chance. So in 20 years' time it will be like a different environment that we'll have at universities and so forth.
I think it's improving. I think you're right. I don't think it's improving quickly enough. So I gave the projection figures of 70 years and 45 years. It's happening quite slowly. And these are problems in the wider society, that attitudes about women that are born out of our environment. The research shows, if I can go back to the point, the research shows that women have to be likeable as well as competent to be seen as suitable to be leaders. There is a higher threshold for women to be successful, which contributes to the lack of women at the top. This has been shown in research where they had a mirror and you observe people in a leadership situation, and men and women have the same views about women leaders. It's not just men who think this. This is something about our society. So, I suggest that the exceptional women who make it to the top may have one or more of the following characteristics. She's probably extremely smart. She's probably got some kind of help with housework, looking after kids, looking after parents. She's good at socialising and networking with men. She's assertive and confident. She probably hasn't had long periods of maternity leave, or she doesn't have any children at all. And she's probably very hardworking and determined. She's amazing, but she's also unusual. And cumulatively, this has the effect of excluding talented women from senior roles, as most of us don't have the time or the energy to compete on these unequal terms. Before you say that there are many men who do their fair share of cooking and cleaning and picking up their kids, I wouldn't disagree. They're great and they're increasing each year, but let's face it, we're not Sweden. So what do? Do we shrug our shoulders? Do we tell women to toughen up, or do we look at the way paid work is designed and our assumptions around leaders? That women face systemic barriers is beyond reasonable doubt. There is a de facto glass ceiling. Understanding who or why is a different question. Listing formidable women who are exceptions to this rule only highlights the rule. I'm not saying it's impossible to make it to the top. I'm saying that women face more obstacles along the way and need to be pretty determined, thick-skinned, or lucky to get there. Thank you.
Said that when men are truly confident in their own worth, women are not merely tolerated, but valued. Let me be clear, it is predominantly women with children, like myself, that face challenges in the workplace today, but be assured that the concept of a glass ceiling in the UK is an outdated concept. UK women today are valued. A glass ceiling is where women are prevented from climbing the corporate ladder and reaching senior positions. It is not just, as Sarah has said, where women are underrepresented. It is more than that, and that's what you're expecting from tonight's debate. It's where the woman is in the kitchen and not in the workplace. That is the dinosaur's view. There are 3 reasons tonight I'm going to tell you where the concept of a glass ceiling is outdated. 1, economics. 2, choice. 3, change. Let's start with economics. Businesses run by women were estimated to contribute £130 billion to the UK economy. Talented women are setting out their own companies and building their own companies. It doesn't matter if they're likeable, as Sarah said. No one cares. It's about bringing in the money to the British economy. Women who own their own businesses are earning 17% more than their male counterparts. The figures came out last week. Bearing in mind, it used to be 15% less, we're talking about a serious breakthrough here. And the other members of the opposition will expand on this point from their own experience. The proposition may now go on to say that, look, it's so bad in corporates that these women have to set up their own companies. Now, actually, that helps our argument in 2 ways. 1, competition. It's how things change. Many years ago, Jewish lawyers were not allowed to join the established law firms. So what do? They set up their own firms. Bowen, Leighton, Paisley, the Barr and Nathanson, S.J. Bowen. And now those firms are diverse, inclusive firms. It's about competition. 2, women are setting up companies that are changing things. For example, recruitment companies like Sapphire Partners, Women Like Us, Aurora. These companies are aimed at getting women back in the workplace after leave, on a part-time basis, if that's what they want, in different-sized companies. Last week, Vince Cable spoke to 7 FTSE 100 companies who had all-male boards. Some of them commented that there were women in their companies with the experience to be on their boards, but they kept getting poached by other firms. There's an issue, I agree, there aren't enough women at a senior level to go around, but it's not, as the proposition would have you believe, any sort of glass ceiling. 2, choice. A female HR director of a blue-chip company who always wanted to be a senior HR director and on the board and has young children, recently told a friend of mine that she'll go weeks sometimes without seeing her children. And she said, you can't have it all. This isn't about a glass ceiling. This is about sacrifices that one makes in life. If you want to work your way up the ladder, it's inevitable. It's going to take you away from something important in your life. Whether it's training to be the Olympic rower or whether it's spending time with your children, no thank you. In some senior roles, in some companies, you need to dedicate life and soul to that organisation. Ask any senior partner of a law firm, ask the CEO. Some women are choosing to take time off to spend with their families. They're choosing to sacrifice their career, no thank you, for their husband's career, making life decisions to go to less demanding careers. How about the women that choose to do it? How about the women that choose, just like men that choose with children, to seek these higher positions? Well, they need support. And times are changing. Men now make up nearly 10% of those who care for children when their partner goes out to work or caring for the women. There were 227,000 men staying at home to look after family between September and November last year. That's a rise of 19,000 compared to the same period in 2011. And it's the highest increase since records began 10 years ago. Guys, these are huge tidal changes. The Office of National Statistics say that these figures are showing it is now more common for men to stay at home while his spouse goes out to work. It is changing. And employment law, my area of specialism, is making things change. Next year we've got flexible working rights. Every employee can now make a right to request flexibly, raise that right. They don't have to be for the reason they want to look after children or elderly dependents. The government are getting rid of this tiered right, where working flexibly or requesting flexible working is a working woman's right. The laws are changing. In 2015, shared parental leave will come into force in the UK, similar to the Scandinavian countries. The first 2 weeks will be protected when the woman has to take maternity leave, and the remaining 50 weeks of her leave can be shared with her husband. They can take it at the same time, they can take it separately. Change is making it easier for women to manage these challenges if they choose to have children. 3, change. Change, change, change. This is not the 1930s, this is not the 1980s or even the 90s, when women were not senior in industry. Or it's not even 50 years ago, when the BBC considered that women were not able to control their emotions if there was sad news to be reported. And as such, the BBC said that women couldn't be newsreaders. You're laughing because that's a nonsense now, that doesn't happen now. During the 18 months since the publication of the Davies report, we have seen a 3 times increase of women in FTSE 100 boards. Since March last year, 44% of new appointments in FTSE 100 boards have gone to women. 36% in FTSE 250 companies have gone to women. Is this enough? No, absolutely not. But we're talking about progress here. We're not talking about a glass ceiling. And the future, guys, is brighter for women than it is for men. So many companies have powerful women's groups now. Let me give you an example of Tesco's. They've got a Women in Leadership course, ensuring that women are represented and mentored as they quickly drive through the ranks. More and more city firms are engaging with women. It's based on pure maths. More women are coming through the ranks, are qualifying as lawyers. Allen & Overy, where I used to work, have part-time equity partners. And along with other city firms, they provide hugely effective maternity coaching, which I personally had and I'm happy to talk about after the debate. City firms are mentoring and guiding women through the ranks. They have to, or they won't be partners in the future. Fiona and I are both partners in professional services firms. Saha has an OBE and co-founded Coffee Republic. Katie is a successful coach and consultant. Both Sarahs are head of diversity and equality at UCL and the TUC respectively. Not bad for a group of women with a glass ceiling. The women here are hopefully an inspiration to the men and women in this room and epitomise the absence of a glass ceiling in our society. In summary, there was a glass ceiling. There isn't one anymore. All I can say to the women here is go out and rise to the top if you want to, because you can. There's an exciting future ahead for women that want to embrace it. There is no glass ceiling because of economics, choice and change. Thank you.
Totally disagree. I think the glass ceiling is there and has been stubbornly there for the last 20 years in my experience. I actually left university in 1987, would you believe it, and I have seen disappointingly little progress. I'm a qualified chartered accountant, chartered taxation advisor, and I recently joined an award-winning top 30 firm as a senior corporate and business development partner. I'm also a board member of SEMA, the Securities Industry Management Association. Prior to joining Reeves, I was managing partner of a top 50 accounting practice, MRI Moores Rowland, At this time in 2006, I was the only female managing partner in a top 50 accountancy firm, and it hasn't really improved since then. I'm a committed advocate of diversity in the workplace. Outside of my job as an accountant, I support and mentor and run seminars for women in business and leadership and aspiring board members. I've published many articles on the subject of diversity, and I've spoken to BBC and Sky News about the need to have temporary female board quotas in the UK. Why have I said this? Because there has been so little progress in the last 20 years and there's so little representation of women at the top. Yes, there is equal opportunity legislation, it exists, but it's still hard for women to rise to the top across all sectors of the work. It's very difficult to actually use that legislation. Whether it's because women are treated unfairly against men, or whether women rule themselves out of the race due to lack of confidence, or the desire to have children is a matter of opinion. But my own opinion is that the biggest factor is conscious and unconscious bias. However, whatever the reasons are, there is a glass ceiling stopping women from reaching the top, which is holding back our economy. There is a lot of research out there which tells you that having diversity in leadership is good for shareholder value and customer engagement. Looking first at the corporate world, Lord Davis in 2011 published a report, Women on Boards, which was an independent review of the representation of women at board level. His findings were shocking as it highlighted that gender equality at board level was stubbornly low. He said currently 18 FTSE 100 companies have no female directors at all, and nearly half of all FTSE 250 companies do not have a woman in the boardroom. He recommended that the UK FTSE 100 should be aiming for a minimum of 25% female board representation by 2015.
On that point, ma'am, do you not believe that quotas in themselves are patronising?
No, I don't. I think if we actually had people looking at people on meritocracy, I would agree with you, but we're nowhere near that. Most women don't even get onto the interview panel in the first place for these roles. I know lots of really talented women who would like board positions and they're not being taken seriously. For example, I spoke to one of the biggest board agencies last year and I said to them, how many women do you get applying for your board positions? They said, I get 100 CVs a week. So I said, fantastic. So how many of those women, which is about 5,000, have actually gone through and successfully got a position? They said, well, one in the last year. So I said, does that mean the other 4,999 were seriously deluded ladies? No answer. So no, I don't think so. There's a lot of research, as I said, Cranfield School of Management, McKinsey and Harvard, that shows a significant link between boardroom diversity and improved company performance. A year on, Lord Davis produced another report, 1 year on. It did indeed find, as the opposition have said, the largest increase of women on boards ever. Sadly, however, if you actually delve into those figures, you'll actually find that the increase is to 15.6% in the FTSE 100 from 12.5%, but virtually all of those appointments are actually not NED positions. They're not executive positions, they're women who have very little power. The NED appointments have risen to 22% from 15%, while the executive appointments have risen less than 1%, so 6.6%, and I think if you look at the very recent data, they've probably fallen further.
Point of information. The NED positions are falling while executive positions are increasing, so that women are coming, there are less female NEDs because they're becoming execs, which is a much more persuasive, influential party
Yes,
board.
but as at the Lord Davis report in 2012, they had only actually gone up 1%. And I think actually since then, if you look at the statistics, they've actually gone down. And there are only actually 2 women in the top role as CEOs in the FTSE 100. Again, that's a statistic that's fallen over the last 12 months. So I do think the glass ceiling is apparent in all workplaces in Britain. And in fact, 2,600 employees were surveyed recently, and 70% of those employees said there was a glass ceiling for women in their workplace. There's also another survey of HR professionals where half of HR professionals believe that this glass ceiling will never go, and just 10% of HR professionals say it will disappear over the next decade. There's another survey by EY of 1,000 UK working women, 2/3 believe they face multiple barriers. So it's not even just one barrier getting into the board. There are multiple barriers during their career. If you look across into the public sector is not as bad as the private sector. However, there is still only 30% of women in senior positions in the public sector across 11 key sectors. And the armed forces and the judiciary have the fewest of all, with just 1.3% and 13.2%, while secondary education has the most. If we move on and look at politics, the most obvious demonstration is there has never been a female Prime Minister before or since Margaret Thatcher in 1979. And interestingly, very recently, David Cameron has sacked 60% of the women in his cabinet, and at a very recent conference, he didn't take a question from a single female journalist. That's how he took them seriously. And if you look at the parliamentary lobby journalists, only 23% of them are women, and none of the political editors are women. If you move on to the trade union, I'm sure my colleague will say more about that, we have the first female at the top for 50 years, and that female herself has said, it's still who you know rather than what you know. If you move on to the private sector, women working in the private sector are on average paid 45% less than their male colleagues. And women's employment in the private sector concentrates around the 5 C's: caring, catering, cashiering, cleaning and clerical, which is quite sad. Yes, indeed, there are a lot more women breaking into the entrepreneurial sector, with an increase of 28%. However, on average, those women only manage to raise £10,000 of start-up funding compared to £15,000 for men. So in conclusion, I absolutely think the glass ceiling still exists, and I really hope it's starting to move in the right direction.
Well, I actually had to Google the word glass ceiling, because I really hadn't come across it that much. And it said it's an invisible barrier that you can see the top position but you can't quite reach it, denoting this barrier some sort of an obstacle. And just rubbish, really, I say to that. It's 2013, and we are still having a discussion about gender. It's extraordinary. It's almost glass ceiling, sort of almost denotes a discussion about equality. Whether or not we're equal to men, is that still an issue? Is that still something we're thinking about? Yes, I agree. There are fewer women in top positions. Women are underrepresented, but they're not underrepresented because of the glass ceiling. Whenever I speak around the country, there's just about one question I always get, and that question is, was it more difficult for you as a woman? And I just can't believe the answer to this question, but I think I always disappoint people with the answer, because I say, no, there was just absolutely, in my career, I have not come across an iota of discrimination or any sort of a glass ceiling. And sometimes I actually doubt myself, because I just have never seen this glass ceiling. But actually, I've had quite a gambitative career, so sometimes I try to take off my rose-tinted spectacles and look through my career, and I think, well, okay, I went to Bristol University, there I read law. No one told me. When I was at university, we didn't have debates about whether or not there's a glass ceiling. So I was blissfully unaware that when I go out there, there'll be a glass ceiling for me. Then I went to a law firm, a top city law firm, the bastion of male bigotry. All the women happened to be, my role models were female partners.
You may have never heard of glass ceiling, but you might have heard of sexism. I was wondering if you've encountered that.
I've never come across a discussion I get. I mean, it's just everything that I have not done has been my own personal failure, has not been because of my gender. I have not come across an iota of sexism, I'm really sorry to tell you. Then I went to the law firm, yes?
Yeah, so if you say you've encountered no sexism, why would you think there are only 10% of women or 1% of women in CEO? Is it because they're just worse?
I'll get that. I'll get to that. So I've never come across this. Then I went to a law firm, then I set up Corporate Republic. I dealt with a gambit of people there. I didn't come across sexism. I now speak across the country. I'm one of the few female speakers. I've never come across any sort of a glass ceiling. And so what I kind of therefore believe is, I think I'm actually in the majority. I appreciate it's not always been like this. And I think for us women, we've got to appreciate the women who were around in the 80s, there was a huge favor. In the 80s, you guys don't even know that, it was a taboo to be female. the idea is that if you were pregnant, people used to hide it. So femininity didn't even come into it. But those women worked hard. They painstakingly established female credibility in the workplace. Then came the 90s, and this whole talk of glass ceiling started. And I think what happened in the 90s, maternity rights, glass ceiling, is women had to opt out. So my generation, were entering the workplace in the 90s, a lot of girlfriends I had who were at university, law school, or the law firm I was with, they actually opted out. They had kids, they couldn't go back. But that was a choice in the 90s. You don't need to do that anymore. I believe that opting out is no more an excuse. Technology has changed everything. Technology has changed the glass ceiling, like technology has changed the work-life balance. No longer do you work your way up the corporate ladder with a narrow vision like that. That's what the glass ceiling denotes. The beauty is when you guys go to the workplace, it's an amazing workplace. The new corporate world wants you to be yourselves. The new corporate world doesn't want you to leave your personality at the door, doesn't want you to leave your emotional baggage at the door. Your point of differentiation when you guys get to the workplace is to be 100% authentically yourself. And this is what I believe as well about this issue of diversity. Again, mentioning diversity. Diversity is not about sex, race, religion. Like, even if you're a single white male, diversity applies to diversity about being an individual. It's about you being you, not you being some cookie cutter version of you. Who you are and what you do should be the same thing. This is the new workplace we live in, whereby our personality and our work are closely aligned together. And I think this is what the savior comes in. So therefore what we need is, when you're in a world where your USP, your unique selling point is being yourself, what you need to do is be creative. Be creative in trying to find a way of working that you love. Home sourcing, part-time work, sabbaticals, kitchen table work, working from your local coffee shop. Whatever it is, you can do it because of technology now. So what we need is creativity and essentially not whinging. And for me, glass ceiling is whinging. It's pathetic victim behavior that I think does women absolutely no service whatsoever. It's a pathetic excuse, I think. So therefore it comes about attitude. And let's face it, the corporate world, as people have told us, was made by men. It's not for men to come up with a solution, it's for us women. So the person I blame is women, yes.
Are children a pathetic excuse?
Are children pathetic excuse?
Having children.
There are many, many women who find a solution. So finding children as an excuse is, frankly, because of technology and the fact you can work at home, you can work wherever you like and be flexible, it's no longer an excuse. There are ways around that. So what I just believe is that basically what women of this generation need is the confidence, the creativity to work their way around glass ceilings. Let's forget about equality debate, let's forget about glass ceilings. It's no longer about equality with men, it's about admitting our differences as individuals. We think differently, we work differently, we define success differently. So this is a great opportunity, and don't let the talk of glass ceiling ruin this amazing opportunity for us to create this amazing feminine future where we can tailor-make our work to the way we want to live. Thank you.
I'm a very, very long way from being pathetic. Let me just get back to my system straight away. I'm going to spend the first part of this trying to dismantle some of the rather pathetic arguments that we've heard before by the opposition. First of all, Sahar says, is equality still an issue? Yes, it is. We still have a gender pay gap in this country of 14%. We still have women in the labour market in the UK concentrated in the 5 Cs: catering, cashiering, cleaning, cooking and caring. We still have males in the UK labour market concentrated in the upper echelons, being judges, hospital consultants and all those kind of very senior jobs. Guess which of those jobs gets paid 5 times as much as all the others, and then tell me that equality is no longer an issue. Yes, it is. My second point is about working at home. Yes, working at home is great if you do the sort of job that you can do from home, but if you're working in a hospital laundry, which is a pretty essential job in this country, it's quite difficult to move the entire plant back to your house and do the job there. And believe you me, as a mother of 2 now grown up, very successful daughters, being a mother is tough and it's hard work. That's those points
On
that
that
I've
point-
dealt with. No, not yet. My next point to do with what Emma was saying, I will take a couple in a minute. Let me just, I'm in my flow at the moment. On a couple of points that Emma made. First of all, about women on boards. Yes, there are more women now getting onto boards, but do you know what? Most of them are non-executive board members. Non-executive meaning boardroom baubles a lot of the time, and some companies, fearful of legislation that might come in, are now putting women onto boards in the most tokenistic way you can imagine, and giving them no support, no training, and taking more or less no notice of them. It's a pipeline issue, this whole area of women on boards. You're not going to get women onto the boards till you start having systems at work that actually develop women's talents and start to make sure that they get exposed to exactly the same opportunities that the men get right from the word go. It's not women's faults that they're not up there ready to be taken on to boards in senior positions. It's simply that the systems at work let them down. And that takes me on to the other point that Emma made. Yes, you can request the right to work flexibly, but you can only make a request. You do not have a right in this country to work flexibly. I can request that George Osborne takes me out dancing, and he can say no. The employer can say no when you request flexible working, because it's too much effort for them. They don't take people very seriously when they want to work flexibly, because it's usually women that do it, because they're the ones that still do the majority of work in the home. And it is work that women do in the home, because the work women do at the home is all about bringing up tomorrow's generation of workers. So let's not trivialise any of that. Other points on the back of that is the sort of talents that women have from the work they do in the home are rarely recognised at work, and yet I can tell you from working in the trade union movement, and yes, we do have a woman general secretary, it's the first for 168 years actually, not 50, just as a point of information on my own side. But the point about that is that when you look at the criteria that largely still male managers and recruiters use to promote women, they're nearly always based on a set of values that strangely fit in with male attributes. So things like juggling and multi-skilling and being able to sort out arguments between warring partners and all sorts of different talents that women tend to bring with them from their experiences at home are not valued very highly as attributes that will get you up the ladder at work. Well, they should be. Those sort of things are what I'd want to see in anyone who is running a company or a public sector organisation that I was involved in. I will take a point now, yes, carry on.
Why wouldn't male people be just as good at doing the things you just mentioned?
Yeah,
I'm sure that some of them are, but they're not skills that they would take into the employer to say you should promote me because I'm good at sorting out disputes or because I can multitask. They'll stick to the agenda that's been set by the men in order to get the jobs that the men are recruiting to. I quite agree with you. I think men can do those things. Let me make another point to you. People talk about the fact there are more men now staying at home looking after the children. I think that's fantastic, I really do. But hang on a second. But the trouble is that the men who stay at home don't actually do an awful lot of the cooking and cleaning. Women will find when they get home that although the man's been at home all day struggling with the 2-year-old and the 5-year-old, mysteriously they've been unable to fill the washing machine, put the dinner on and do all the other things that women have become very good at doing while they spend their time at home. So the woman comes back from work and has to do all those things in addition to trying to relax and do some more to prepare her for the next day of work. Now I want to finish just by talking about values in society. Society pays people according to what it values them. That makes sense, you're all highly intelligent people, you know that. Why is it that someone who is a car mechanic, nearly always a man, gets paid 3 times as much as somebody who works in a nursery or looks after children? What sort of society do we live in that values mending cars so far above nurturing, bringing up and educating children, the generation of tomorrow? There's something very wrong with our society. That's where the glass ceiling comes in. The glass ceiling isn't a physical thing, it's a set of restraints that are there because of the prevailing context in which people live their lives. It is there, a lot of men don't realise it's there because they don't hit it, but women will know what I'm talking about when they get out to work and they find that trying to get up, and it's not women's fault, so nobody's saying they should be more assertive, because even if they are assertive, they're smacked down and told they're being aggressive and not behaving like women. It's almost impossible to win those sorts of arguments. So in my view, there is a glass ceiling. It's a very, very tough glass ceiling. There are steps being taken. There are moves being made. I'd like to pay tribute to my own organisation, the TUC, for having done an awful lot underneath to try and change positions lower down so that women are given that kind of support through collective strength to make their way up in organisations. Union learning reps spend a lot of time educating women who've lost out in the school system by ensuring that they have the literacy and numeracy skills that they often lack. You're all at university, you don't know often what happens when 16-year-olds still can't read and write and attempt to get out in the labour market, and the employer after 6 months says, well, you're no flipping good, you're going. But actually union learning reps have given a lot of support, especially to women who've not been dared to ask for these sorts of things at work, but with the collective strength of a trade union have been able to make big steps forward. You don't believe me, some of you, but I can tell you that if you're in that sort of vulnerable, low-paid position, you need someone to stand up for you quite often. If you haven't had the kind of privilege of a good education that gets you in there at the right place, you need some sort of strength. You stand up on your own, you get knocked down. So my supporting the proposition is done from fiery and long-term experience. There is most definitely a glass ceiling out there, and we have to crack it.
It's really nice to see actually a room full of students listening, doing something exciting. I admire and salute you all very much. Now, Sarah, darling, have you had bad experience with men? Because if they're not filling your dishwasher and looking after your children, clearly they're not worth anything, are they? And I really wonder about this whole Sarah, women have to be liked to get ahead. Well, you know, I'm living proof that that's probably, actually, the least liked woman in this whole room, and that's going some when you've got a TUC member. And yet, I feel I've done all right, and I encourage all of you to push yourselves ahead. Now, my views might be a little different to the rest of the panel, but I'm going to share them anyway. Do feel free to boo and hiss, because after all, pantomime season is only just over. Now, we've heard a lot, haven't we? In fact, we've heard it many times. I think we heard it, was it twice or was it 3 times, the 5 C's? Well, I tell you what, that's just clap, trap, clap, trap, clap, trap, clap, trap, and more clap, trap. If we heard any more statistics or survey analysis from this proposition, Jesus Christ, we'd all be mathematicians. And I'm sick of it, because one person's survey is just something else for someone to disagree with. Just one moment, darling. I take after Michael Winner, and I'm proud of the fact. I really worry about things like, why is it we haven't had one female Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher? I think that's a little bit of a lame argument about why women can't get ahead. Now, my 3 points really that I want to share with you is there's no reason at all why women can't get ahead anymore. I don't believe in a glass ceiling. For me, it's less of a glass ceiling and much more about some kind of sprung floor that women have right now, because we've gone a very far way from equal treatment, and we've moved on, I think, to special treatment. We have positive discrimination, which I would suggest we don't need. We have all-female shortlists, which for me would be an insulting way to get a job. And we have quotas. You know, we used to have fish quotas in the 80s. We had milk quotas in the 70s. And now it really is the age of moving forward, because we've managed to get women quotas. And I really think that's disgusting for me. I think from a biological perspective, sure, women do have a tough time of it. We do have more to carry. We have a bigger burden that we have to carry to make our way to the top. But tough toots. You decided to have children, get a grip, move forward, and get on with it, for Christ's sake. I don't think you can stay at home in your slippers for 12 months if you want to stay in the race. I believe, which of course is dastardly, because I'm one of those children that has help at home. I'm one of those women that has children that are looked after by someone else. I am one of those women that only took 2 weeks maternity leave for each of my children. You can look at me with pity, but I'm okay. I think if you want to get ahead in this workplace, the reality and the truth of it is that you have to crack on and get back in the race in order to win. And I don't think you can blame biological differences for that. I just think you have to get over it and get on with it. And that's pretty much what people expect in the workplace right now. And we might not want to hear it, but I do believe that that's the truth of life out there.
On that point, though.
Yes, darling.
So,
Where are you? There.
here. So you seem to be saying there's no active glass ceiling, but if women have extra things that they have to give up, does that constitute a passive glass ceiling?
I don't think it's a passive glass ceiling. I just think it's a truth that if you have kids and you want to get ahead, you have to make a choice. And that choice can't be about going home, sitting at home for 12 months and then saying, when you've got the job before I have and I've been at home for 12 months, I can't come back to work and ask, why did you get that job and not me? When I wasn't even there. You know, people take in their photos to show their bloody bosses. I don't want to see them. Get back, get working and crack on with it. And I'm really not interested in that babies. I think all babies are bloody ugly anyway. Including my own. And including my own. Boo, boo, hiss. Yes, and he's behind you and all the rest of it.
Mind?
These guys, just where are you? Oh, there, with the lovely facial hair. One moment. These guys said 50% of HR professionals said the glass ceiling would never go away. And do you know why that was? Because 50% of HR professionals want to make sure their jobs never go away. There's been such a proliferation, a hard word to say, I think you'll agree, of equality and diversity officers, my least favourite sort of people, that we can hardly have any revenue generators anymore in the companies that we work for, and that's the commercial disaster. Facial hair, gentlemen, go for your life. Really gorgeous, gorgeous. Tell us your thing.
I wanted to ask what your equivalent was for men for having to make the choice between keeping your job or giving up for 12 months, because men don't have that sort of choice to have to make, and that's an inequality.
I'm bewitched. But the thing is, no, they don't have to make that choice. And when people say to me, oh, but your life is dastardly, oh, you even have home help, oh, you've got a nanny, that's tragic. I say, yes, I just work like a husband, and then people seem to get it straight away. Now, I think the other thing that I really want to talk about before I close is just that, you know, in life we have to accept that women are rather different to men. Men ask for what they want, they demand it. Women are grateful quite a lot of the time, and that's not acceptable, and that's why we're not rising up. Men accept not being selected for certain positions. Women complain of being rejected, and that's not the attitude we need either. And men strive to improve and try again and are determined to make their way to the top. And women have this euphemism for giving up, and it's called the glass ceiling. Well, I promise you the glass ceiling doesn't exist anymore, but there's a whole bunch of reasons that women use as the excuse for not getting to the top. And I don't think it's acceptable. I think we have to fight to get to the top. I think we have to accept there's no glass ceiling, and I think if you really want to, you have to make personal sacrifices to get ahead.
That gentleman in the blazer and a hoodie, I completely agree. The biggest danger of the glass ceiling is the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe it's there, you will somehow create it for yourself. The second one, I questioned the lady here, why women are underrepresented, because I think they choose to opt out. It's a problem with attitude, it's a lack of motivation, it's a certain amount of laziness not to find a solution. So that's why women are underrepresented. I think it's our own fault that we're underrepresented. The third one, someone mentioned children. It's inequality that women have to go off and have children. For me, it's not inequality, it's a blessing. It's a blessing we have as women that we're able to go and have children. And it's about, exactly as Katie said, how you use that. If you choose to go and have children, then there are compromises, like everyone has compromises, men have compromises. That's life, face it. And the fourth one I'm going to say, again, agreeing with the guy at the beginning who was saying, it's if you're in a company where there is a glass ceiling, well, it's not a glass ceiling, there's a barrier. It means the company you're in is really old style, it's run by people doing the old ways. So when you get the barrier, don't look at it as a glass ceiling. It's just a company, its old style is outdated, and that company's going to sink. So you're better off leaving a company like that. But just don't call it a glass ceiling, and just go for it. There's so much opportunity. Just forget about these statistics, these barriers. Don't be a victim. Just take control of life, and the future is feminine.
Right, I'd like to dedicate this to Finley. And also to the girls of the Daughters of Nannies, in the centre there, much respect. I think as proof of quite the phenomenal job we did over here, we really struggled, didn't we, to find any student willing to talk on behalf of the proposition. Even our proposition lady turned out to be an opposition lady. So I think we've done a great job. Our left-wing militant lunatics here, on my far right, represent all the things that I can't stand, to be honest. They're a lack of commercial nows, they're non-revenue generating. I mean, from a unionist point of view, I'm surprised she's even here because she's probably worked her hours for this week. From an equality and diversity perspective, yet again, another non-commercial element to business, and I think that's exactly the point, is that boardrooms are not about gender, really, they're not. They're all about profit to the shareholder. And I think if some of these guys understood what the profit motive was, they would understand that the glass ceiling really doesn't exist. Thank you very much.
Difficult act to follow, I'm sure you'll agree. I'm not going to answer the personal types, although I would happen to say that releasing all the potential in each individual in this country is good for the economy and enables more money making, albeit indirectly. I'd also say that the argument around the ceiling putting women off, it's a really interesting one, sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. There is an element of truth in that, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a glass ceiling. It's a kind of an inconvenient truth that there is one, and I'd rather not spread the word so women don't believe that it is going to happen. In terms of future legislation, it's just that future legislation around sharing parental leave more equally. It hasn't happened yet. We're talking about now in the proposition. Interestingly, at UCL, there's something called additional paternity leave, where the man can share the leave with the woman. We've had very little take-up. The culture isn't right. The law is in place, but for some reason people aren't wanting to take advantage of it. So, you know, you can have all the law in the world, but it doesn't change the way people behave and the gender norms in society. I'm really pleased that Sahara is unaware that there's sexism and gender discrimination. That's brilliant. I don't quite see how that's happened. Maybe she went to an all-girls school. I don't know, but it's certainly something that's relative for many women by the time you get to my age anyway. In terms of work-life balance in academia, I mean, in corporate organisations, maybe you can work from home and use high technology. Academia is dependent on going to international conferences. Various things in the promotions criteria are very difficult for people who have kids or dependents. So there are things that you just can't work around using home working and technology. So to finish, I'd say that women are not a minority group. We make up 51% of the British population. We're not represented, ergo there is a glass ceiling. I think there's a question of definitions here. My definition of a glass ceiling is a reality where women are, there's a paucity of women in authority, and that's how I would define it. To argue against it is unscientific. It's like saying smoking is not that bad for you because my gran smoked 40 a day and lived to be 90 years old. The pure anecdote. Trust me, I don't want these barriers to be there. I don't want to tell you the bad news story, and I hope that my feisty nieces grow up in a world where they have the same opportunities as men. But if we don't address critical gender issues such as childcare, gender norms, the long hours culture, part-time working, and the continued power of the old boys network, then I'm not optimistic that women will scale the ranks despite having the intellect and the skills to do so. Women should not have to make more personal sacrifices and difficult choices than men.
Again, I don't consider myself to be a victim or pathetic. nor do I consider myself to be lazy. I didn't have a nanny, and nor did my children have a nanny. They actually had their father. I don't consider myself to be privileged. I have experienced bias, both conscious and unconscious bias, directly within the workplace, and I've witnessed it used against others in a number of organisations. And again, that's both conscious and unconscious bias. I don't want my daughter or my nieces to go through similar experiences. I don't think that just because a few women have been very lucky or determined enough to make it to the top doesn't mean that a glass ceiling doesn't exist for others. I absolutely think the statistics speak for themselves, and those statistics are current. We haven't seen a significant change. We do have more women in non-executive positions, so yes, they can choose the glasses or indeed the vases that the flowers sit in. But that's as far as it goes. The statistics speak for themselves. I want a level playing field for all women, and not just those who've been lucky enough to make it to the top, because diversity is absolutely essential to build a successful economy. Choice, it's not choice. At the moment, those women aren't getting the choice. I want to see real choice. Women aren't getting board positions because they're not actually getting to be interviewed in the first place. They continue to be appointed by who the chair knows and not on merit. I would like to see conscious and unconscious bias continue to be discussed and debated. I absolutely believe the glass ceiling continues to exist across the British workplace.
Okay, the last word from the left-wing, work-shy, feminist, revolting, man-hating woman sitting at the end of the row. I always find when people debase their arguments to that sort of level, they haven't really got anything very much to say. It's very amusing, but it's not terribly clever. My final points are that, first of all, I don't really believe that the opposition actually did anything to destroy the argument that there is a glass ceiling. Effectively, by their arguments, they attempted to demolish it. Ergo, there is one. They just went around how you deal with it in a completely different way, talking about assertiveness. And in fact, one of them, Sahar, talked about barriers. Well, barriers, glass ceilings, it's all pretty much the same thing. It's semantics, isn't it? But to back my point, I'd say that there are actors out there that demonstrate that there really is still a glass ceiling, whether you want to acknowledge it as that or not. For a start, legislators, not just in this country, but all over the place in the European Union, have successively brought in legislation that does a lot to try to prompt better behaviour at work and to give people who have been in a vulnerable and a minority position much better rights. They don't do that because they're evil, scheming lefties. A lot of them are conservatives who've brought in actually some of the best equality legislation around Europe and in the States and various other places, because they understand that you need these things to have a fair society that gives you a much fairer deal and is much better at evening out levels of non-prosperity and dealing with some of the class issues which are inextricably linked with the gender issues. I rather agree with that one. So legislation is there as a reflexive prompt, and it's not there by accident. It's there with a purpose. Whether it works well or not is for another debate. The other huge issue is that the good employers in this country now, small ones, large ones, many that I meet around the tiny bit of work that I occasionally do, they will tell you that they're actually beginning to get much smarter about their workplace systems, and they're beginning to see that they have to make various moves now to accommodate the very talented women who aren't getting on as well as they should be, but need to have an employer who understands that it's actually good for their business to have flexible working systems, and that also encourages women to be able to play a part at home and a part at work and share their responsibilities with their male partner or their female partner, or if they don't have partners, with their nanny or whatever it is, whatever arrangement they choose to look after their children. But all this goes to show that there are still these barriers, there is still a glass ceiling, and you have to be active to get rid of it. We can't be passive. My heart goes out and my full spirit goes behind all those many low-paid women, uneducated women who've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, don't get nice little labels attached to them, but nonetheless have made big shifts in places like Dagenham, go and see the film, to make systemic change. It's been hard work, but they've broken these ceilings, and there is progress being made, but there is a ceiling still there.